Good day, everybody. Dr. Steven Greene here from mAke the grAde. I'm going to talk about a really exciting but important topic today. And I'm here with Blaine Blontz. Blaine's from Independence Planning Group. Good morning.
Morning.
Blaine, thanks for coming in. We are going to talk about maybe not the world's sexiest topic, but certainly a critical one to many, many families in this world and in my particular business. So, how to finance a college education. So this is something I think keeps a lot of people up at night. Hopefully you'll be here to help them sleep a little bit better. So let's get right into it. Tell me, what's your general plan? What's your overall strategy when you're talking about funding a college education?
Certainly. So what we want to do first as the family is deciding which schools to pursue, which schools to apply to. We want to help them determine the true cost of a college education. After that, we'd like to look at how they're presenting themselves, how they're presenting their financial picture. And in doing so, we can help them maximize their financial aid eligibility. Beyond that, we realize that this is not just a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year, 4-year investment.
Sure.
Beyond that, this is something that's going to impact, and as we've seen, impact individual and families' retirement plans and plans into the future. So we want to make sure that what we're doing now is going to be best serving them into the future. And then today we'll take a look at some of the common mistakes that are made and some of the hurdles that hopefully we can help the individuals listening get over.
Well, I don't think it's any big secret that college is expensive. In fact, there's some colleges that cost more than people make in a year.
Absolutely.
Which isn't really great. But so just real fast, is there one of the questions I always get is when to start?
Yeah.
Which isn't on the slide, but I see these commercials on television with the babies and people are starting the kids a half a day old, and that's one of the things we're going to get into here. So the whole goal is to maximize aid, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. So tell me, how do you know what college really costs? We can go on a website and say, well, Temple is $33,000 a year or whatever, but what else plays into it?
Absolutely. So what's important and where some people might stop the conversation is just looking at Temple's website, for example, and checking out what that sticker price is. What people don't realize is that there's a lot more to the story than just that sticker price, just that $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000. You think about the schools like a Temple, like a LaSalle in the area, as compared to a state school, and there may be a $20,000 to $30,000 gap between those. What people don't necessarily realize is that by choosing a LaSalle, by choosing a Temple, by choosing a private school, you may not be required to pay that full gap out of pocket.
Because of several reasons.
Because of several reasons, absolutely.
And one thing I should say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was a little remiss. Blaine, part of your background, in addition to a financial planner, is you've worked at LaSalle.
Correct, yeah.
And maybe some other schools, so you've actually been in the trenches making decisions on the other side of the aisle here, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think you know where you're coming from. So give me some idea of how. So let's just use 10,000 as an easy number because that's easy math, right? So we go on a website that says the school's $10,000. What factors would reduce that number?
Absolutely. So some of the things that we would look at and the schools consider are different types of financial aid. And they're generally broken down into two categories: need-based financial aid and merit-based financial aid.
Sure.
Need-based financial aid talks about that aid that you're eligible for based on your financial picture, based on your income, the assets that you have. Merit-based financial aid, you're looking more at scholarships. So you're thinking of athletic, academic, maybe club scholarships, things that are based on merit. That's the name of it.
Exactly.
And beyond those, you have some loan options, which are both maybe tied to need, that people are only eligible for at certain points. And there are actually some loan options that people don't otherwise know about that everybody's eligible for in some portion, just by filling out a financial aid form, which we'll get into a little bit later.
So the need-based, is it just, I know it's probably a complicated one, but is it essentially a formula?
It is.
Income plus savings, minus something, multiplied by something, divided by something. It spits out a number, and the college says you should be able to pay X.
Exactly, yep. And that's what's determined, and that's when we get into helping families reduce their financial aid.
Because there's ways you can
impact.
shield some of that.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. There's ways it can be organized. And the important thing with the need-based aid, I hear all the time people say that, well, I make too much money to qualify for financial aid.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, with loan options, there are always options out there for some form of aid.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to some of these private schools, again, going back to the example, they've got to bridge the gap. And even if it's beyond some of those federal or state grants, there are going to be some need-based aid options that they're going to provide to help families kind of in that middle range.
You showed me a specific example, which I don't think we have in this card deck. But so let's use Temple versus LaSalle.
Mm-hmm.
Temple sticker price is, let's say, $30,000.
Yep.
LaSalle's is
roughly $50,000.
Okay,
right
so it's a $20,000 difference.
Yeah.
That's $80,000 over 4-year education. But if it's child's actually going to go there, what's the true difference in your experience?
It's less than that $20,000 because LaSalle knows that to be competitive, they're going to have to make up some of that gap. They're not only taking on people that can out of pocket fund that $20,000 a year, $80,000 over 4 years. So that's when these types of aid get into consideration. And we've got tools that let families see, based on their unique financial picture, what type of need-based, what type of merit-based aid they would qualify for. Again, traditionally based on what these schools are offering. So when it gets down to the bottom, you go from the sticker price and you break it down based on need and merit. You'll actually find these numbers are a lot more manageable.
So is it conceivable I could send my kid to Temple, it really costs $30, I'm paying $27. I could send my kid to LaSalle, it really costs $50, I'm paying $31. Or something like that.
Yeah, the gap is definitely, it winds up in most cases being a lot less than that 20.
And that's what people need to look at.
Exactly. And not saying that you have to decide on the LaSalle, but at least if we don't rule it out in the beginning, we can then see what their offer is.
Got it. All right, let's move on here a little bit. So how do you figure this out? I know it's a little bit of math. Yeah. Probably you're plugging it into a computer. Nobody really does math much anymore. But talk about this. These are some things on here. There's a lot of initials. It's the old alphabet soup of loans. But so I got, let's say I got $20,000 in a savings account that I've set aside for college. What's good? What's bad?
Sure. So when financial aid eligibility is determined, they're looking a lot at essentially your taxes. Okay. They're looking at what you're making. That's a big form that they're going to use to fill out this FAFSA that you see listed here. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Okay. And what that is used to do is determine, just like you said, how much they think that you can put forth towards college. So your income makes that up, what you have saved in assets for yourself and investments, but also what you have saved in some cases towards college. A lot of families use these different vehicles that are listed. A very common one is the 529. You also see things like a Coverdale or some of the custodial accounts, the UCMAs and the UTMAs. What we look at is how these are positioned. And depending on how they're positioned. What do you mean by position? It depends on who's the owner of these accounts.
Right, okay.
And that can play a big role in how these are counting or not counting against you for financial aid purposes. So we take a really individualized approach. We look at how these are positioned for the families, and we see if there's opportunities for reorganization.
So give me a specific example. I've got a 529.
Absolutely.
And it's in my name as custodian or whatever for my child because they're too young to own it.
Absolutely, yep.
And is that disadvantageous? What would be an alternative, say, to make that more favorable for me?
No, that's a great question.
Because I'm trying to pay less money.
Absolutely,
like anybody, right?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So there's a few ways that you can organize it. These type of accounts can be in the child's name, which is the least favorable because that's going to count the most against them when it comes to financial aid.
The worst is I have it in Junior Greene's account.
Exactly. Anything child's name, even if it's just a savings account in their name, we want to find ways to try to get that out of there.
So let's go kind of in order. So second worst
is parents, because that's going to also be falling into the FAFSA.
Steve Greene, custodial for Junior Greene.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's not going to be ideal either, because that's also going to fall under the FAFSA. It's going to be the parent information. It's also going to be the student information.
So they're in the debit side of the situation.
Exactly.
In terms of getting aid.
You got it. Yep.
Right. So
next. So next, what you can do with some of these accounts is you can actually position them to be in the grandparent's name. And by doing that, this still allows the parents to fund them and to contribute to them. But when it comes to reporting and doing the FAFSA, it's not something that's going to have to be reported under the parent's information. for the sole reason that it is listed, under the grandparent as the custodian. So just by making that simple change, that is something that you can really save yourself.
And you could do this across the board, I suppose, with a number of accounts.
You can do this with several accounts. There are some that are that are more restrictive than others. We know of accounts that are available so that we can do it across the board. But that's, again, we go back to the individualized approach. We want to make sure we're learning more about
each.
The
bottom line here, the important takeaway here
yes.
is this is not something you can do the morning before you leave for college.
Exactly, yeah.
And this requires some thought, some time windows, things like this.
You got it.
This is why people need to plan.
Exactly.
All right, so I think what I'm learning here so far is college is expensive. It's going to be expensive no matter what, but there's ways that can be reduced with some research and some on the college end and trying to position yourself in an optimal way.
Exactly.
Where do people go from here? I woke up today. I said, I got to get this done. Where do I start?
Absolutely. So it depending on where you're at as far as your time frame. You can start this as young. You said about the people rolling out of bed with the infants.
Right.
Savings. If you're able to save over a longer period of time, that's always going to be more beneficial.
In any investment.
In any investment, in any event.
So we start up and look at where we are today.
Exactly.
I got X, Y, and Z. And
Yep. Okay. So we can do that. You can even plan if you're at a think of middle school age is a good one that I use as an example, because at that point we can help families get an idea of what that future school impact cost is going to be, so they can do a mix. They can do planning for the savings end, but they can also do some organization to know that they're going to be in a good spot when it comes to that financial aid eligibility determination. And then as you really approach, even 11th senior year, 11th grade senior year is not too late to do some of these things and at least take advantage of some of the opportunities to maximize the eligibility. Or, some of the other things that we can do is just point, because of my experience as a financial aid counselor, I can point people in directions as far as what to ask for, what other aid opportunities they might have, what their loan options are, things like that they might not otherwise be aware of on their own.
So it's never too late to start, but there's better times than others.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the sooner the better, as always, but it's never too late, and we always want to take a look and see what we can do with the family.
One of the things I struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of people do, is balancing the college planning piece with your overall retirement piece, and this and this, and the golden years, or whatever they call them anymore. Because you don't want to have 100% of your money in a college plan.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So that's got to be something that's part of the discussion. Okay. Just give me a quick snapshot of what somebody would come out of a meeting with you looking at.
Sure.
So
yeah.
We sit down for a couple hours, whatever. You pull up all these forms. I give you all this information, and now I got what?
Absolutely. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to first talk, and again we talk, and I keep going back to the individualized approach. We want to understand what the goals are.
Is it possible to really not have an individualized approach? I mean, I'm sure you do that.
It's.
I mean, can this even be cookie cutter and work?
It's really not, just because you have to determine. Everybody has different school preferences. Right. Everybody's working with a little bit different when it comes to their finances. And even their expectations are going to be different.
Let me ask you a question, even though it's going to interrupt our flow a little bit. Let's say I'm planning to send my kid to Cornell. Well, let's even use LaSalle. I figure starting in 8th grade, he's going to LaSalle, and I'm figuring out a $200,000 budget or more. Well, so we put away, we plan, we strategize. And then all of a sudden, the summer before college or whatever, he decides to go to Westchester, which is what, 18, 20 a year.
Absolutely.
So I went from trying to save at a 200 level.
Yep.
Now I only need, let's just say, 100.
Absolutely.
Easy. Is that bad? Does it matter? What happens then?
So if
I mean, I guess it begs the question: can you overplan?
Yeah, that's a great question, because with some of these accounts, you can overplan, and there's a concern about overplanning. If you look at a 529 account, you're essentially saying that this money is going to be allocated for college spending.
Okay.
But if you're tying it into your overall financial plan, maybe there's a portion that we are very sure, even if he ends up in a Westchester, that is going to be spent towards college. But we're not overfunding that account, because what we can spend at Westchester, the excess of that's going to need to be spent at a college, maybe passed down to another child.
Because you can do that.
You can do that.
Okay.
If that's not an option, then you might have to liquidate it at a fee. So the overall picture, what we want to be doing is there are vehicles out there that aren't tied to just college planning. We want to have the overall picture of retirement so that, sure, if we are overfunding that it's not a bad thing, that just means that you're going to have more money to use into
So if I have $100,000 put away and we only use 80,
yes,
let's just say it's probably a good problem to have. The other 20 is still my money. There's just certain stipulations along the way.
Sure, well, and that's where with a 529, it may not always be your best option if you're not clear. And
Right.
there are a lot more. You talk about restrictions, limitations to your money. There are other accounts where you're not facing that, and that's something that we would get on a more individualized approach. But that's absolutely a consideration that needs to be made.
So we would do an evaluation.
Yes.
Or you would do an evaluation.
Yes.
4-year plan. That's based on the 4 years of college. You can't spend all your money year one.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and with that, the 4-year plan, it's something that people see as getting over the hurdle for that first year and just really seeing that big number for the first year and not thinking about year 2,
you
3.
still got the same number.
Exactly. You're going to have to. And unfortunately, I saw cases at LaSalle where people could go through that first year, but then there were question marks on how the rest is going to be funded. So you want to make sure you have the overall picture. We sometimes like to plan for more than 4 years.
Does it ever change along the way? Let's say, well, again, this is a little off what I was thinking, but let's say we're in LaSalle, we're there second year, everything's going great, and then I lose my job.
Yeah.
Wife loses her job.
Sure.
We have some catastrophic illness, and we spend $70,000 in the hospital, unfortunately. What's the sensitivity to that?
Yeah,
is it year to year?
It is year to
a
year.
One-time thing?
It's year to year. Now, the merit-based financial aid is usually over for the full year.
Okay.
For the full 4 years, I should say. As long as a certain GPA requirement or something like that is met. The need-based aid is evaluated each and every year because what they're using is your tax return.
So you have to resubmit that information.
You have to resubmit, and then you become eligible each and every year. But the issue can be two-sided. Either if you would lose your job, maybe you're going to be eligible for more in need-based aid, but maybe there's a certain amount out of pocket that you can't cover anymore. On the other end, maybe your wife goes back to work. If I have an inheritance or something like that come in a year,
win the lottery.
Yeah, win the lottery. Absolutely, stranger things have happened.
All the time, right?
Yeah, and that can impact your aid eligibility as well. So you want to make sure that you have a plan together.
Is this
for
a
all
mandated thing? So if we're at XYZ college, you have to and you're getting aid. You're compelled to resubmit your information each year.
Absolutely, you're compelled to resubmit if you want to take advantage of some of the aid programs that they have.
Anything else you want to tell me about the individualized plan? We haven't talked about already.
Yeah, I just say that you're thinking about potentially a $40,000 to $50,000 investment each year, depending on how the aid falls. That's up to $200,000, $250,000. Across a 4 to 5 year period. Depending on how we spend that money, how we pay for that expense, that has huge impacts into retirement. Talking about your future retirement. Sure. So those are things that need to be considered.
I was reading somewhere that for years and years and years, and maybe it's still the case, the people's biggest investment in their lives was always their house. For I don't know, maybe forever. Until 4 or 5 years ago, if you have more than one child, you're spending more on college and maybe graduate school. We even got into that.
Yeah.
Than people even spend on their homes, average, on a national sort of level, which is a lot because a house you have some equity in, hopefully.
Yeah.
College education, and we're not even getting into the educational side. There's all kinds of people going to college and coming and living home again.
Yes.
And can't find jobs.
Yeah.
Let's start to wrap it up here a little bit. So this is what I got out of today. And Blaine, this was great. Number one, you got to figure out the true cost.
Exactly.
Right? There's a sticker price and there's a take-home price. You got to evaluate where you are now. You got to plan for the future. You got forms like FOSFA, all this stuff. What else, in 1 or 2 sentences, what do people really need to know? What's really the bottom line here?
Just like you said, this is going to be an investment on the same level of your home. You don't just go out and do for sale by owner or just go out and buy a home yourself. You have specialists that come in and help you, and that's what we're here for. On the financial side of things, that's what you're here for. On the testing side of things, and there are others out there. So for this type of investment, it's good to have people and specialists that can speak with authority to these topics.
And how much of it's a moving target? In other words, the rules are what they are today. They may not be the same next year.
Sure.
You got the government intervening. You got colleges changing their policies. It's important to keep up.
Absolutely, and that's what our job is, to know those regulations, and to keep up.
This is why you want to talk to somebody who's qualified.
Exactly.
Sure. All right. How do we get a hold of you? You're not going to be here all day, right?
I'm not going to be here all day.
Got other things to do, right?
How about it?
All right.
So here's my phone number, 717-372-9685, and you've got my email on the screen right there where you can reach me.
And what do you offer? Get quick. I know you've got some things you can do for people. So, what's somebody calls you? What's the next step?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to do a brief overview, either over the phone or in person, just to see what their needs are, to see if I can be of service. And then there's ways we can do more consulting, which is by the hour, or we can just do overall evaluation and planning as part of the planning group that we're with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something we'd absolutely discuss that first meeting.
Beautiful. Here's me. Hi, people. By the way, I'll just throw this out. I am retooling my website. I don't know if you've seen it. It's shiny and bright now.
Brand new.
It was always nice, but it's upgraded it. So everybody should know how to get a hold of me. I always welcome your feedback. Blaine, you want to have the last word here? I learned a lot. I think this is a critical topic. I spend most of my days trying to help people get to the point where we're at this point. It's a shame when the finances become a gating factor. But what's the last thing here? What's the big take home? What's going to get people moving here?
Yeah, I think that there needs to be, and hopefully this brings up a sense of urgency, but to know that just because you think that you're making too much for financial aid doesn't mean that there's not some things you can be doing to take advantage of what's out there.
Beautiful. So here's how you get a hold of Blaine. Blaine, thank you again.
Thank you.
He's looking very sharp here. You're going to be able to see this on video. I get these financial guys, and they're always wearing ties and suits. It's 95 degrees out today, people. So he's looking very handsome here, which is obviously into his credibility. But he does know what he's talking about. I'd encourage you to give him a call. There's no risk there.
Absolutely.
And all you're going to do is learn things that you're going to need to know anyway. All right, listen. Thanks again. Today's topic is planning for college. That's important. That's critical. Don't put it off. This is something you need to be doing sooner than later, because the day's coming and they're going to get you either way. All right, thank you. I'll see you next time.